Hey, Anton.
Yeah, Margaret?
You know what people don't talk about enough?
What?
How understanding Maddie is not making Felice eat. Welcome to People Don't Talk About Young Royals. I'm Margaret. My pronouns are they, them.
And I'm Anton. My pronouns are he, they.
And we're people, here to discuss the show our friends are sick of hearing us talk about.
If that sounds like you, stick around. If your friend sent you this podcast out of a desperate attempt to get you to watch Young Royals, take this as a sign.
Go watch Young Royals, then come back to this podcast.
Margaret, what are we talking about today?
Today, we'll be having a plot discussion of Season 1, Episode 1, focusing on all other relationships that are not Wilhelm and Simon.
Woohoo! Before the episode's disclaimer, a note for our listeners. As proof of concept, not only this podcast truly does undertake painstaking dissections, but also that, as we said in our trailer, the discussion potential of Young Royals is practically limitless. Editing Anton has a cheeky little update for you. The amount of released podcast material as of publishing the previous episode, The Art of the Choice, in Praise of Nuance, has surpassed the runtime of Season 1 of the show.
Wait, has it really?
Yes, it has. I double-checked my math.
Oh my god.
I will say, as a clarifier, I am measuring the what Spotify lists as like I'm listing what Spotify for podcasters lists as the length of our episodes. And for Young Royals, I didn't look at the ending timestamp of every episode, but the number of minutes that Netflix lists in the thing. But I'm assuming they're close enough that it's good. And also we've well passed it.
Damn. All right.
Yeah. More on that to come. This is the first cheeky little update of many. But now to the disclaimer. In this discussion, we won't be summarizing the plot of the episode because we already did that. If you want or need a refresher, head back 4 episodes in our feed to our most recent This Week at Haleshka for a full breakdown. This episode discussion will likely be all over the place, so strap in. You have been warned.
Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is that conversation between Felice and Maddie after Felice is done doing her thing to... You can tell which one of us is asexual. And Maddie, they have that conversation about the royal family. Maddie doesn't get it. And then Felice, like, they're gonna get ready for dinner, but Felice is just like, I'm not hungry. And Maddie does not force her to go. And I want to talk about that because I think that's very supportive. I think that it's, like, probably one of the worst things when you're struggling with something is for somebody to tell you to just do it anyways. And her not doing it, I think, shows like a level of understanding of what Felice is experiencing.
I will ask, simply because I think you can read it either way, and I kind of have watching the episode at different points. Is Maddie... I think you can read it either way. That either Maddie knows what Felice is going through and is choosing not to press it, or, like we mentioned last episode, Felice is really good at putting up a front and hiding it, and Maddie actually can't tell.
I think you're right. I think you can read it either way. The way I've always read it is she knows and isn't pressing it. Because...
Which is funny, because I've actually read it the other way.
Interesting.
Yeah. Let's not psychoanalyze too much what that means about both of us. But I think partially because I think, as I alluded to this episode, I'm pretty sure this was my point. Like when comparing Felice and Wilhelm, they are similar characters, but Felice is actually much more convincing.
Yes.
in the front she gives to other people, and I think potentially it's because. Maybe it's because I've revisited this episode by watching it myself less than you have. And so I feel like I'm stuck with a lot of my first watch through impressions. Mm-hmm. In a lot of ways, despite the amount of time I've engaged with the show. And so therefore, like, without knowing really who Maddie is as a person. Like, she's cool, but without any future episode context. I imagined that the purpose of that scene was to illustrate how people at Helishka do not engage with each other in that way.
Yeah.
I think I have this referenced. I mostly bring this up in my notes when it comes to August's relationships, but like, people at Helishka, while close, there's certain things they just don't talk about.
Yeah, there's like a distance.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I would say, like, case in point with like the everything about Wilhelm's experiences there, but like,
yeah. And I agree with you, but I feel like when you live with somebody, it's so difficult to have that distance. Because whether it's intentional or not, it's like you're in each other's business, you know?
Yeah.
And like, there's only so many fronts you can put up. And while Felice is a lot more convincing than a lot of the other characters, there are times where they do have to come down eventually. Yeah.
And I think, to play devil's advocate with myself, like looking at my notes, the first thing I have is, and they were roommates. No, but seriously, I see nothing sapphic here. Disclaimer, I at least don't ship Felice and Maddie.
Disclaimer, me neither.
Okay. I don't even know how many there are there, but like, I saw that, and they were roommates, and I couldn't resist. Basically, what I wrote was, after that was, I get the feeling that Maddie sort of deals with Felice's bullshit. And by that I mean, I'm not saying that Felice is an awful friend, but it's just that we don't really see her asking about Maddie. That's kind of a limitation of Maddie and Felice's role in the story at this point.
Yeah.
Like, Maddie is introduced basically solely as Felice's roommate. And like, doesn't get fleshed out much beyond that.
Yeah.
And so, like, we see a situation where two people are talking, but it's only about the other person. Right. And so with that, when that is your snapshot of this relationship, I sort of just kind of got the impression that it's kind of either sort of, and like, this is really an unfair impression, I think, of like trying to summarize an entire relationship in a single scene, but it's kind of like the purpose of the storytelling in this way. So like, without the ability to give exposition like you would in a book, all I have to go on is this conversation where it was only actually about Felice.
Yeah. And I think that very purposefully leaves enough up to whoever is watching it to kind of interpret whatever way they see it. Whether that was, in the director's and the writer's like intention or not, I think it leaves a level of interpretation open to whoever's watching it.
Yeah, and so you can either say, oh, Felice is self-centered, and then like, oh, but you could also say Maddie is secretive or more reserved, or is just kind of the kind of person who doesn't like talking about herself, and is more about helping other people.
Yeah.
And so there's so many ways you can read that scene, and I think kind of the way you read that scene is going to depend on whether or not you think Maddie realizes that Felice has disordered eating.
Yes. 100%. I fully agree.
Which, to be fair, is not confirmed by the show, but like is heavily implied by that scene, I think. Or at least by our reading of the scene. So we're kind of just sticking with that. That's at least our headcanon for up to this point. I think I also, as much as we don't love talking about it, we do need to talk about the not washing of the hands, because what I think it illustrates, as much as people are so weirded out by it, and I understand it, to be honest, and I think this is I think 100% this is me being AMAB.
Okay.
But until I saw I think even though the first reactor I think I saw react to that scene is a gay man, I didn't recognize that was weird that she touched her hair until I saw a reactor react to it.
Interesting.
Which I don't want listeners to think that means anything gross about me. But, like, I think that just means that, like, as a bisexual man with very little experience with female anatomy, I didn't know the logistics.
Okay, fair.
Well, you do, like, in theory. But, like, I didn't know the not the logistics. I didn't know the practicalities of AFAB masturbation. Masturbation. So, like, I get it now. Okay? I get it now. But basically, even after that, maybe, like I said, first watch through impressions kind of coloring my view. My semi-hot take.
Let's hear it.
Is like, I am not as grossed out about it as by other people, probably because I have less context for it. But I think it's meant to illustrate how comfortable they are with each other.
Yeah.
And I think just that scene in general is meant to show that Felice is comfortable enough to masturbate in their shared living space, but also not enough to not be embarrassed about it.
Yeah.
So it's not a weird level of comfortable.
Right.
Or like a boundaryless sort of uncomfortable. But I also feel that she is more embarrassed of who/what she was masturbating to than that she was masturbating.
I would agree with that.
Which I do kind of appreciate.
Yeah. Because there's something to be embarrassed about by masturbating.
Yeah. And Maddie doesn't call her out about it like that. Which I think is also
she's just
really
like,
good.
hey, I wasn't the one watching porn.
Exactly.
You know.
Exactly. Like, she's not shaming her for, well, it's honestly really fun interaction. Like, we don't want to spend too much time on these characters because they don't factor too much into the plot. We get one scene of them together, but like, just the fact that Maddie didn't react being like, you're masturbating. She only called her out about it when Felice said, ew, Maddie, when she says, is royal dick better than regular? Like, like she like, in that sense, like, regardless of how we want to interpret Maddie and Felice's relationship at this point, Maddie's interest is a person who is capable of calling Felice out on her bullshit, which is as much as I say that she kind of just like deals with Felice's issues and like doesn't really seem to have a voice of her own in this scene, she at least has a clear personality there, which so she's not a totally a cover character, which is like, again, props to the writing of the show for giving us a character who has literally one scene in the first episode, and we know who she is.
She wants to know if royal dick is better than regular dick.
Yes. It also helps that, like, Maddie isn't getting her own podcast episode for this episode, so I just want to quick shout out the amount of reactors who either don't, like, I'm really glad when they don't comment on it because it started to get annoying, but the amount of reactors who are like, wait, is she speaking English? Halfway through the scene.
Can I tell you a secret?
What?
When I pull something up on Netflix that's speaking in English, I get confused.
And that's like, on watching too much Young Royals. Well, there's no such thing as too much Young Royals, but yeah.
Like, I was watching like Outer Banks over the weekend, and I was like, wait, why are they speaking in English?
Any one of our listeners who maybe one of the real ones, like, watching along with us, or like just like hasn't chosen to look it up. I think we've actually talked about that. We've only talked about this off mic, and I don't know if it's actually been confirmed, but my headcanon is that Maddie is the, like, son of an American businessman.
Yeah.
Or like a business person, who has been sent to a Swedish boarding school.
Yeah.
Probably because one of her parents is Swedish.
That would be my I think I adopted that headcanon as well.
Yeah, because she has at least been raised in America. You can tell from her accent, but she's going to Sweden. And English is...
And she understands Swedish.
But she understands Swedish, but she also doesn't speak Swedish doesn't chooses not to speak Swedish around other people, which gives me the impression that it's not her first language, obviously.
Yeah.
I could tell that from her accent, but like the way that she interacts with people is indicative of someone who understands the language, but like is not comfortable enough in it to decide to speak it.
Yeah.
Which I think is really great, really cool representation for,
yeah,
and something that like knowing Lisa, she probably read about and was like, I'm including a character like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out to Lisa.
Yeah. Okay. But should we move on to Felice's other relationship that I have marked?
Yes. No, we can go to her other relationships. So August and Felice. August is very, like, obviously trying to pursue Felice. Like, in the church, he's like, I'm gonna marry that girl, and then he says that gross thing, and Eric laughs. And then in the party scene, he keeps trying to dance with Felice, but Felice just keeps pushing him away. Which, I don't know, I think that's interesting that Felice is like, no, get the fuck out of here. And August just never catches the hint. Which, honestly, he can't swallow his pride enough to catch the hint, so that shouldn't be shocking, but it's still something to note. Question. Do you think August actually likes Felice? Or do you think he likes the idea of Felice?
I mean, my first note is Felice as the ultimate status symbol.
Yeah.
I think it can't be anything other than either that or both, because of who August is as a person, frankly. Like, we see so much evidence. Like, the first thing he lists about her is who her family is.
Mm-hmm.
He lists nothing else about her that he finds appealing or attractive.
Yeah. He's just like, Felice, modern nobility.
Yeah, it's like probably implied that he finds her physically attractive, but he never says that, which is like really honestly odd for a straight male. I'm going to say it. Like, to not go straight to aesthetics, you have to be a special kind of straight male. And August is a special kind of straight male. The kind for whom status and like the fact that she is modern nobility like stacks higher in attractiveness. Although, to be fair, Felice is the same way.
Yeah, she is.
But
somehow it's less insufferable from her.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'll say it.
No, I don't think calling August insufferable is a hot take.
No, it's not.
Okay, speaking of which, but, I mean, maybe it's not a speaking of which, but there's the heavy implication from Eric that August sleeps around.
Yeah,
and the additional implication that Felice would make him more favorable towards monogamy. That's more on his part than on Eric's part, because Eric seems maybe slightly dubious. So, like, and also, I will say, when we get to August and Eric later, this might kind of come up again, but like, we don't exactly know how long it's been since Eric saw August.
Mm-hmm.
It could be as much as 2 years. And so...
Yeah, I get the vibe it's been a while.
Yeah. Like, doing the math, I'll bring it up later, but, like, they're 2 years older. So, Eric is 2 years old, 2 years older than August. So, he might not have seen him since he graduated school. And so he could be talking about first year August, for all we know.
That's true. I didn't think about that.
I think it's possible. I have no proof for this, but third year August cares too much about his responsibilities to actually sleep around anymore.
Yeah. We don't... Evidence isn't the right word, but we don't see any sign, there's no vibe that he is somebody who sleeps around. He very clearly, at least in my opinion, is really only going after, lusting for, however you want to say it, Felice. Like, he is fully focused.
By this point in the story, he is very much, like, Felice focused. He's Felice sexual. Yeah.
Honestly, that's the one thing I can't blame him for.
And I do want to have, this is not a disclaimer like we usually do disclaimers, but like I want to say that I'm not saying there's anything wrong with casual sex or polyamory or anything of the like. And if August is polyamorous,
good for him.
More power to him, I guess. It's the only time I'd ever stand.
Yeah.
But like I am not personally polyamorous, but I am not going to judge people who do it with
absolutely not. That is their business.
The full consent of all parties. So,
absolutely.
That being said, nothing I've said matters in this case because Felice is 2 years younger than him, and he literally admits that he's trying to use her insecurities to get her to date him.
Yep. So he sucks.
August is trash, and we'll be the first to say it. We're not the first to say it.
I don't think we're the first to say it.
We're going to have the bold take of saying that we hate August Horn.
Yeah. I think we can go on record.
This is an anti-August Horn podcast.
That's actually what the rest of this podcast is going to be. Not just this episode, but every episode.
We have a whole...
We're scratching the old format.
Stay tuned for an entire episode of us roasting August. That is coming...
I can't wait. That's going to be my favorite one to record.
It is coming in... I can't do math right now, but it is... I'm not going to try.
It's coming before we start the next cycle.
He's getting in his own episode this cycle.
Because he sucks.
But with August out of the way, I guess now the only person left to talk about is Felice and Sarah.
Oh boy.
So we start off with them really not liking each other. Well, Sarah is indifferent, honestly. Okay, question. Do you think the opening stable scene is an example of classism? Or is Felice just having a bad day, and would, treat anyone like that?
I read it as Felice just having, a bad day.
See, I think a little column A, a little column B, I can't totally say that Felice isn't being classist in that moment.
I think, okay. Hear me out.
Yeah.
I look at it as she's having a bad day, but that doesn't take the classism off the table. It could, because, she's been born and raised in this, Maddie, she says, you're the richest family in Sweden. So if you've been born and raised in that environment, I think it's almost a given that you're going to have some sort of, implicit bias, implicit classism.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be a conscious choice because bias rarely ever is. Literally,
right.
I can think of very few homophobes in this world who are I'm going to choose to be homophobic right now. Same with classism, especially the kind of really unconscious classism this I'm talking about, I think here is what is happening, I think, is that Sarah is in a role that Felice is very comfortable with, but has a very prescribed way and learned way of interacting with, which is she is the help.
Yes.
She is a to use a very dated term, but one that I feel some people here would actually use. She's a servant.
Yeah.
The fact that she recognizes that she is in her same grade and in her classes probably barely factors into how she's going to handle an interaction, especially when she is that emotionally charged and beating herself up that severely. I think we have the capability generally to be less to fall prey to our unconscious biases less when we are in a better emotional state.
Yeah. Oh, yes. That I would 100% agree with.
I do not think Felice has tons of classist tendencies, honestly.
No.
We don't, other than her, obsession with, status and, appearance, which, again, we've shown I think we've proven at this point are so ingrained just to be definitely just learned behavior. A long time ago learned behavior. But I think that the fact that Felice is shown to feel bad about that interaction. I mean, we talked about it I believe in Art of the Frame, or either Art of the Frame or Art of the Choice. But like that does a lot for me as the proper introduction of her character to not make me immediately hate her as much as I hate August.
Yeah. Because she shows some like form of remorse for what like how she's behaved.
Yes. It is a recognized form. It's like it is the point at which I can say like, yeah, it is a level of unconscious bias that Felice is like semi guilty about / like semi aware of. At least to the degree that she's like, I shouldn't have at least acted that badly. I don't know if like generally like treating Sarah like a servant at this point like is a thing that she would take like a real issue with, because like knowing the mentality of privileged people, like they're like, well, what's wrong with that? They are a servant. Like, yeah. But because then you have Sarah, who guessed more about Felice's true motivations for her actions than Felice, I think, is aware of. Because, like, again, Felice is a person who is doing a really good job of convincing basically everyone else around her that her life is perfect. And yet, Sarah knows it's not about her. Right. And that makes me think that, one, this obviously isn't the first time Felice has probably walked in after Sarah's had to ride Rousseau, frustrated and mean. Yeah. So I think that has given Sarah, I kind of just realized as prepping for this episode, that has given her unprecedented access to Felice at her most vulnerable, I think. Because there's something that we haven't gotten to yet in the series about this horse that seriously messes with her head. Yes. And Sarah is the only one with an actual, like, intimate view of what that is doing to her. Right. Because also, I mean, this is something that is often said about this quote-unquote servant class generally, is that a lot of times, because they are ignored to just completely invisible at the worst by a lot of rich people, they have an inside look that most people don't have. Right. And so I feel like in that way, Felice is disguising her true emotions less for Sarah than she is for her friends. Yeah. Oh, 100%. Because whether, like, consciously or not, she likely views everybody else at that school like, these are people that I may potentially have to work with in the future. These are people that need to like me. I at least need to have a transactional relationship with. She doesn't see that for Sarah. No. At least not in the first episode. No. In this episode, she does not. And really, you really get into this situation where you start... Like, I don't want to get too much into what the show is saying about class and privilege, because we have an episode about that. But more broadly, like, rich people don't see interactions with a quote-unquote servant as anything that will exist beyond that interaction. Right. If they're not a servant who is, like, even, and in some cases, even if they are a servant who, like, has been with them for a long time, or, like, they will see daily. Yeah. Like, it takes a lot and a special type of mindset and reason to actually, like, form close bonds, which I think leads us into the party scene. Yes. And just that whole interaction between Felice and Sarah that we get at the end of the episode. Yeah. What do you think Felice means when she calls Sarah special? Different than everybody else at that school. I don't think she means it the way... I don't think... So when she says that Sarah just, like, lists off her diagnoses, I don't think that's the way Felice meant it. Me neither. I think she just meant it as, like,
you're not bothered by the politics, by the drama of this school. Like, you're different than everybody else, or at least you don't seem to be bothered by that stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of the rest of the students, it seems like it's kind of like a popularity contest all the time.
Yeah.
And Sarah doesn't appear to be bothered by that.
I've seen criticism of Young Royals, actually, as a show, that posits that, like, it falls into a trap of glamorizing the poor or the middle, or like the middle class, and kind of basically just saying that, like, they're just, like, so much better morally. And so therefore it's a good thing that there is class disparity, because being poor has benefits or whatever. I don't agree with that criticism of Young Royals.
I don't think I do either. No, I don't agree with that criticism.
No. For many nuanced reasons that we will probably encounter throughout this podcast episode and this entire podcast in general. But the points at which I can get a little inroad in to how, with the right perspective, you could see that, is the fact that there are so many rich people in this show and so few poor people that, like, when they say that Sarah is special, like, they don't mean it in the context of her autism and her ADHD, even though that's how Sarah takes it. And even with Felice meaning it, what I really think meaningfully what is happening there is that she's encountering a ideology and mindset that she's never been exposed to before.
Yes.
And she's seeing the benefits of living that type of life. Yes. And, like, I don't think it goes as far as, like, broad statement about Sarah's class necessarily,
right.
But I think it invokes this sense of, like, yes, Sarah and Simon are both different. And in this case, that is something that Felice enjoys about Sarah. And that in her kind of inhibition lowered state, that's what comes out. Is this realization of Sarah's otherness in a way that Sarah doesn't interpret the way Felice intends it pretty clearly. Which I think, and this is maybe just with knowledge of what comes next, like, is significant moving forward. Yes, that's not how Sarah takes it. And that conversation isn't had the way Felice meant it, because Felice probably wouldn't want to have that conversation.
Right. Yeah, I can kind of see that criticism, but only if you're looking at the show, like, at a very, like, overarching view.
Yeah.
Like, once you get down to, like, every episode, it doesn't really stack up, but
yeah,
because the show is very nuanced, which is a common theme.
It's an argument you can make.
Yes.
With a more, and this isn't a total dig on that person. I won't name the video essay I got this idea from, because I like a lot of their other content. But I think, I personally believe, and we could be biased as fans of this show, but that's a more superficial reading than we are taking with this podcast.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement.
At a far more granular level of weighing the dialogue and the acting choices throughout the show.
Yeah.
The closer you zoom in, the more complex this show gets.
Yes.
It's the whole reason why we've already surpassed the length of season 1 talking about it. Oh no. Are we going to have multiple parts to this episode?
I think we are.
Oh, shit. So, Sarah thinks that Felice is pretty. I want to address the sapphic potential of this, but I do not see it beyond the first episode.
I don't either, but I do want to address that it is sort of there.
We want to acknowledge the shippers who still ship them.
Yeah.
But sorry to all of you Sarah and Felice shippers out there. We personally can't stand past this episode.
Yeah.
And that one scene, honestly.
Yeah, I don't see it anywhere else besides that one scene.
Like, I mean, there are some people, there are reactors who watch the episode, especially queer female reactors, who are like, are we getting sapphic horse girls? And then they get their hopes up.
Yeah. Yeah. Fun fact, I'm a sapphic horse girl.
Yeah. I'll decide if it makes sense to add that you're a horse girl. Well, you're not even a girl though, so it's well.
No, but I was when I was a horse girl.
That's right. That's fair. Okay.
Or at least I thought it was. That's more accurate.
Felice comes around pretty quick to thinking of Sarah as cool, granted she is drunk. But like she's at least grateful that there's someone there to help her while she's throwing up. And she isn't dismissive past the point of like, she is nice to Sarah to an extent that she isn't totally valuing her own ego the way August would.
Yeah. I'd agree with that. She can admit when she's wrong about something and about someone.
Yeah. And honestly, again, though, I do think it comes back to her potentially being more comfortable being herself around Sarah because of what we've talked about.
Yeah.
In the section. Like, I honestly don't know if that scene with Sarah would have happened if Sarah was anybody else.
Right. Probably not. To be honest.
That in and of itself is interesting. All right. So we just talked about Sarah. Let's transition to Simone and Sarah.
Okay, it's obvious that they're like really close. Simon sticks up for Sarah, when we have that scene where Felice is being rude to Sarah and Simon's like, she shouldn't treat you like that. I don't think Simon understands her want to fit in. I don't know if Sarah quite knows that she wants to fit in yet, but she does, in the sense of like, she, asks her mom to sit up. She says that thing about the riding pants.
Yeah, if all of the flags that we pointed out in Art of the Choice weren't enough for you, spoiler alert, Sarah wants to fit in.
Yes. But it doesn't come across that way like when she's in school. Yeah,
I would agree. Just to what you said so far, I said they're close as far as siblings. Like, as far as siblings go, like, they're pretty close. Like, Sarah is older, but she's repeating a grade, making Simon her in the same year.
Yes.
I think that is a factor that I forget sometimes, but I think is important because sometimes it's really easy for people to kind of just act like Simon and Sarah are twins when they're not. Sarah's older.
Right. And she had to repeat
the grade she is currently in.
Yes.
Yes.
Because of bullying at her old school, which I think is why Simon is protective of her.
Yes. Yeah, that's my next point. Simon is protective and concerned about Sarah. You're good. You don't be sorry for making the conversation more natural. So I think that Sarah kind of resents Simon for his protectiveness. I don't know. I think that's that much of a hot take. I think it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Like, literally, like, drop out if you want to, but I'm not repeating a grade again.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's almost a direct quote. Like, like, that is passive aggressive as hell. Like,
yeah. I would agree with that. But I don't think it's passive aggressive, but there's no significant strain on their relationship. Simon kind of lets it like roll off his back. He's like, okay. And then they just get on the bus.
Yeah. I wrote down that they have wildly different takes on rich people bullshit.
That they do.
which, and like wildly different approaches of attending Hilarska. Like Sarah is thinking of it as a way of trying to fit in, whereas Simon sees it as stupid, snobbish, and a trap.
Yeah.
Like the way that they associate with the like social markers of being rich are distinctly different.
Mm-hmm.
The dinner scene proves that very succinctly.
Yeah.
The dinner scene at the Erickson's house, to be fair. There's 2 dinner scenes. But like, yeah, I guess I don't really have much to say beyond that. Like,
yeah.
At least within this episode, like, it's just some interesting to note that, like, we've talked extensively about Simon's whole deal with rich people bullshit. But to talk a little bit about Sarah, like we have thus far, like, she sees it as a possible way of, like, not to speak too much to my thoughts on Sarah, but like, she sees it as a way that she can be more than just ignored.
Yeah.
Like, the most positive thing she says about Hilarska in this episode is, at least people don't bother me here.
Yeah.
But I think now that she's gotten to that point, that much isn't good enough for her anymore.
Right. Now she's like, I want to actually belong here.
Yes. And to be fair, this is all subtext. We're technically kind of reading ahead, but like, I think the trajectory of the show is pretty clear. So.
Yeah. And also, their experiences at Hilarska are very different, because she's like, nobody bothers me here, whereas Simon, on the other hand, it's very clear that a lot of people have bothered him.
Which actually, that goes to the next point pretty nicely that I have.
I'm a fucking wizard.
Going from Simon
Twice in a
to
row.
Simon and the border students in general. Like, this is a relationship between a specific character and Simon, but just like Simon's relationship to the school, which we've talked about pretty extensively, so we don't want to talk about too much. But I want to push back a little bit against what you said, because I think there's not much difference between how Simon and Sarah would be treated if Simon acted the way Sarah did.
Yes. No, I agree with that.
The way people treat Simon is very clearly based on his nickname of Socialist Boy or Socialist Guy, a reaction to the way that he interacts with rich people bullshit.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And again, that is just kind of reinforced their already existing attitudes, where Sarah has made the decision to interact with it in a way that is conforming, and Simon is resistant. And one of those has clearly gotten a better response, and so looking back a little bit, like Sarah's like, why aren't you doing that? And he's like, because it's stupid. And you're being a snob.
Yeah. She, unlike Simon, tries to assimilate in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
That Simon very clearly does not.
Yeah. I think that Simon is stepping back. I think that the school's general perception of Simon could be seen through Nils and Vincent.
Yeah.
But do we think they're representative of the student body as a whole in that scene?
I think they may be representative of the vocal part of the student body. Do I think that every single student sees Simon as somebody who shouldn't be there or shouldn't, voice these things? No, because that's kind of impractical. But the people who have a pull and a voice in the student body, I think do, because they're likely the people who are the most embedded in this, like, wealthy 1%.
Yeah. Or, like, they're the third years who have been the most entrenched in the culture.
Yes.
So, yeah. I think Simon is invisible. Or, for some people, his big mouth has tipped the scales and making him genuinely unpopular.
Yeah.
Like, he already had a school-wide reputation centered around his leftist political beliefs.
Which, honestly, is my goal in life.
He's been there a month. Like,
yeah.
One of my favorite things to think about related to Simon in the time before the show starts.
Yeah.
What is the first thing he opened up his mouth about?
I hope it was something in like whatever that class was.
I think it's philosophy.
We got the welfare. Yeah.
Yeah.
We got the welfare scam quote from. I hope it was something in that class where he was just like, and said something that was a very leftist ideal. That's my dream.
Yeah. And like, I think that the fact that he's tempted to leave and go back to Marienburg after only a month is something that like I'm fixating on because I forgot about it so completely.
Well, because it's just so quickly mentioned.
Yeah. And not by him, nevertheless. Like, it clearly has been discussions that him and Sarah have had, but he doesn't bring it up in that first interaction because that interaction is mostly about Sarah. And so the conversations that they've had before are just left implied. Like, the fact that, I don't know, his whole demeanor at the school, like, the fact that a detail that I honestly, I can't remember if I brought this up in our summary episode. And I might have wanted to wait until our final episode about symbols to talk about this, but it fits in so perfectly here. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but the key that Simon uses to lock his locker has a keychain on it of a middle finger.
Mm-hmm. I love that part.
And I actually didn't fully put together what that detail means until right now.
Mm-hmm.
He hates the school.
Yeah, he does.
He's literally flipping off his locker every single time he opens it.
Yeah. And everybody who's walking past him as he opens his locker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, the fact, a detail that I literally heard from a reactor notice for the first time, like yesterday. When he is interacting with August, and which is also the same shirt he was wearing in Welfare Receivers, he's wearing, I think it's like a slogan of something, like I think it's like a Nike shirt or something, but it literally says "every damn day."
Shit.
Like,
god damn.
I
never noticed that before.
Yeah, neither did I until someone pointed it out in something I was watching, and I was like, wow.
Damn.
Yeah. There's someone who posted an episode on Reaction like 4 weeks ago that finally came up on my YouTube dashboard. So.
Shit.
Yeah.
And that's like, I think that really kind of summarizes his experience at Orshka.
Yeah.
Because it sucks every damn day for him.
Every damn day.
Every damn day.
All right. Let us talk about Simon with his friends, Ayub and Rosh. Because I grouped them together. I don't know if you did too.
Yeah, I did.
I see them as his connection to what he's left behind.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't see a ton of them besides the bus scene, but something that I want to point out is how much Ayub looks out for Simon. It's like when they're playing video games and Simon's like, "Hey, did you use my dad as your way to get alcohol for, was it Midsummer's? Whatever party it was."
Midsummer, yeah. It's
Midsummer.
Holiday in Sweden.
Yes. Sorry, yes, the holiday.
Yeah,
he's like, "Yeah, sorry," and then Simon tells him what the deal was. I get alcohol for this party and I get to bring Sarah. And he says, "Just don't go to your dad. You always get depressed when you see him." And
something I do want to say though is that for as much as I definitely agree that Ayub is, and probably Rosh to some extent, although Ayub and Simon maybe seem slightly closer. I that's based on only this episode, honestly though.
Yeah.
I think that Ayub is more intimately, as much as he's intimately familiar with Simon's life in Björstad, he and Rosh are so clearly disconnected from the world of Hilershka.
Oh, they have no clue.
I think they are disinterested enough to not even know more than a month in whether or not Simon wears his uniform every day.
Oh, yeah. I completely forgot about that point, but yeah, absolutely.
I think about that every time I rewatch the episode now of Ayub having to ask.
Yeah, that's true.
Like,
I never gave that specific, like, part too much thought.
Yeah. And, like, the cynical answer is that it's not well thought out enough writing, considering that he's been there a month for them to ask it. But I think I'm going to make it a deliberate character choice because I believe in Lisa.
I always believe in Lisa.
And the fact that they are so disconnected from it that they haven't even noticed.
Yeah.
They don't notice until something's different. And it's like, wait, do you have to wear a uniform every day? Like, I guess giving them the benefit of the doubt, like, they might think that he changes before he leaves school every day.
God, that would be such a pain in the ass.
It would. Like, I'm not saying it's a great benefit of the doubt, but, like, that's also kind of giving Lisa the benefit of the doubt to not make Ayub and Rosh actually, like, I won't say it's a totally dumb question, but, like,
yeah, I can kind of see them not noticing until something is different, because I just noticed that one of my close friends got her nose pierced, and turns out she got her nose pierced last June.
You know,
so
valid. Okay, one last thing I want to talk about, and I think we've mentioned this before, but not in the context of this relationship, so I want to make this distinction.
Yeah, let's go.
I think that between Ibn Rosh and Simon, I think they all think that the royal family is dumb in general and fun to laugh at. That's for this episode. But I don't think that Ibn Rosh necessarily see the royals as a social drain like Simon does.
I think, oh, absolutely.
I don't think they think about it politically like Simon does.
No. I fully agree. I think they are just like, haha, look at this kid who fucked up again, who has everything. And Simon's like, no, this is like he hates the institution for political reason, not because it gives him like somebody to laugh at.
No, yeah. Which does honestly, it kind of makes me think how Simon developed his politics, but I think I have a theory about that later. Stay tuned.
I am also staying tuned. I want to hear this. Well,
first we got to talk about Ayub and Rosh's relationship with each other.
Okay.
Because it's kind of a closed loop here. But I do want to talk about, basically all I have to say about this is they definitely have a friendship of their own outside of Simon. But I think he like completes the trio. At least that's the feeling I get. And also something that's that we need to, I think I want to remember going forward, because it's like, again, because of when the show starts, I forget about it. Simon would have only recently not been in their lives constantly.
Right.
Like, he is still very much like, Simon is still fully in the orbit of Bjarstad. Like, he's only been at Hilerska for a month. And like,
he's lived in that town his entire life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And probably considering how well Ayub's mom and Linda know each other, at least he and Ayub have been friends for forever.
Yeah, I mean, I was even in the
dinner scene. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you're good. No, yeah. So that's just something I want to flag for the future. Is like, Ayub and Rosh are very disconnected. But they've also only like known their new normal of Simon going to Hilerska is still new for them.
Right.
So,
yep. 100%.
Now, leaving you in suspense, I think that Simon got his politics from his mother.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Like, Linda is less strong in her opinions. She's more worried about, at least around Sarah, wanting to like not offend her.
Yeah.
But she speaks enough politics. Just in the way that she says things and the little phrases that she says.
Yeah.
And I think Simon's at least like heard what his mother has said, and I think he maybe is then taken a few steps further.
Yeah. I think we can agree that he's definitely taken it a few steps further than Linda.
Yeah.
But ain't that like Gen Z?
Yeah. But also, I wouldn't totally discount Linda as not being a socialist.
No, I wouldn't either.
I just think that she is less inclined to fight for it, I think.
Yeah.
Like, she is, I mean, I don't want to say this is a bad thing, but she is more willing to compromise. And
that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No.
I mean, compromise is sort of how anything happens.
Or like in either direction. Like, I'm not saying it's bad that Simon doesn't compromise.
Yeah.
But like, Linda also seems concerned with doing the right thing. She's clearly the source of Simon's morals. if not his
Yes.
politics, his morals, and
Definitely his
her
morals.
her morals led to his politics. If
we know his morals didn't come from Mika.
yes, but like if
I'll drag him until the day I die.
yeah, like
Drag
if
Mika.
yes, like if you don't buy our take that Linda is as political as Simon or has the same politics as Simon, she at the very least like has a lot of the same sensibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Like that subtle detail of the fact that Simon and her are the only ones who really speak Spanish to each other in that scene.
Yeah.
Like in a lot of ways, I don't want to speculate too much. Based on just similarities, Simon seems more like his mother.
Yeah.
Which potentially leaves the open question that I don't want to touch, and I don't think we can touch probably ever without getting really speculative, but like, is Sarah more like Mika then?
That's what I was just about to ask.
Like, because Sarah isn't very much like Linda, and I don't want to, and like, I think it would be reductive of us to say that it's just the fact that she's autistic.
Oh, yeah. No. Yeah. I don't think we can say that.
No. Because just simply, like, Sarah having autism has nothing to do with her wanting to conform.
Right.
Like, not directly.
Yeah.
Like, that is just who she is as a person.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, the little we get of Mika in this episode, like, we talked last episode about, pretty extensively, about how, like, he clearly has some, like, normative thinking. Mm-hmm. And, like, Simon's out to Sarah and everything, and she seems totally fine with it. But like Mika's also fine with it. I think it would make sense that Sarah has internalized fitting in the way that Simon has internalized from his mother, like standing out, honestly.
Yeah.
Like the power, or at least the power of standing out, because there's an implied history here, considering who and where Mika is. That Linda was not in a place to take care of herself for a lot of Simon's life. So Simon took care of her.
Yeah. And that's something that I want to mention between Simon and Linda's relationship is he looks out for his mom's feelings a lot. And we see that in the dinner scene. And I think he also works to bridge the gap between his mother and Sarah.
I see it as Linda bridging the gap between Simon and Sarah.
Interesting.
In some ways.
Okay.
Like I just think maybe that might be partially because I had to write basically all the dialogue in that scene down, but like she acts as referee like twice.
That's true. She does.
Like she's when that scene that I keep mentioning because it's a great bit of improv where like Simon is chewing loudly and then like chews louder when Sarah asks him to stop. Like Linda is the one to go, Simon, por favor. Like it's just like that was a terrible Spanish accent. Okay. I'm a Spanish minor, I swear. I just haven't spoken in a while. It sounded Italian. Anyways, but like
if you hadn't pointed it out, I wouldn't have noticed. I took German.
I know it's
Shout out to the listeners.
Regardless, shout out to the listeners. If you speak Spanish, that was fine, right? Don't answer that.
In the comments, everybody tell Anton it was great. Does Spotify even have comments?
Podcasts don't have comments, but you
but in your heart,
if you really want to. Also, like we asked last episode, you can comment in the Instagram post announcement of this episode.
Oh yeah.
Anyways, so regardless,
what were we talking about?
The fact that Linda plays referee between Simon and Sarah. Yep. Like I think that I just say that because like she is the softer position between those two, between them.
I can see that as well.
Like I could definitely see, because there are more moments of Linda reminding things to Simon of how to communicate with Sarah. Yeah.
I guess I was just thinking about after Sarah leaves the room. Simon is like, no, like it really is okay. Like, even though it's not.
No, you're right. Like both of these things can be true. Yeah. I think. Like,
absolutely.
I think in terms of like who they are as people, I think a lot of the times in their like in their interactions,
Mm-hmm.
Linda helps facilitate communication between Simon and Sarah.
Yeah.
But I think Simon is the only one of all three of them who has given himself that protective role.
I'd agree with that.
To the extent that he has.
Yeah, 100%.
He's protective of both of them,
Mm-hmm.
as we've mentioned.
And Linda's a good mom. I don't want to like take away from that. From
No,
what we see in the first
I know there are
episode.
people who really want to rag on her, and I hate that for reasons that we will get into eventually. Like
I can't take like Linda is a good mom.
Yeah. The way that Simon is protective of Linda comes down to she knows how much Linda cares about giving them a good life.
Mm-hmm.
Wants to know that and he wants her to know that she is doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Saying it in the Hilarska, regardless if he believes it or not.
Yep.
And I feel like you can read all of that in their interaction after Sarah leaves.
Yeah.
Like,
fully agree.
It's so heartbreaking to me. Like,
yeah.
It's like we talked about it last time, but our talk last time really contextualized for me. That is the moment that we see that Simon is not just a person who speaks his mind, period. He's a person who speaks his mind, who chooses to lie and hold his tongue.
Yeah.
When it is for this one person.
Yeah. And that shows how much he like genuinely cares about his mother.
Yeah. And I think we can argue all the live long day about whether or not he was right to do that. But it's the choice he made.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really what's more at issue here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if we evaluated every choice these characters make and that we don't agree with it, like, we'd be here for forever. But I think that it's hard for me to see Simon doing anything differently, which is always my, like, the thing I come down to about whether or not I agree with the choice or not. It doesn't matter whether I would do it. It matters that, did it make emotional sense at the time?
Was it genuine for the character?
Exactly, which is why in real life and in fictional shows, I often come down to choose to come to a place of empathy and understanding why a character did what they did,
mm-hmm.
and not caring about what they should have done.
Yeah, and because again, we don't know what happened prior to the show starting. We don't get any sort of flashback. We don't have any context besides starting at timestamp 000. So, we don't know what their past was like with Micah. We can kind of infer based on how no contact they are, but we don't know. So this could be the best option that at least Simon can see, is trying to be trying to look out for his mom's feelings in this way.
Okay. Do you have anything to say about Simon, about Linda and Sarah, before we move on to Simon and Micah?
Nothing that we haven't already talked about, really.
Cool. Oh, dang! I have a detail.
Yeah, go on.
She's concerned about Sarah because of her past bullying.
Yep.
Linda is.
Mm-hmm.
I think, what do you make of the choice to not to gender the concept of friends, and saying she asks how the girls at Hilarska are, and then Sarah has to remind her that there are boys there too. I kind of take that as that she was bullied by girls at Maryburg.
That could be.
There's also a sapphic rating of it that we won't get into.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of a weird, detailed question, but
no, but I think it's valid.
What is this podcast for?
I think it could be that she was bullied by girls. My immediate response when I watch that scene is the old idea where if you're attracted to that gender, you can't be friends with that gender.
Yeah.
That's sort of what I thought.
And I would imagine if Simon is younger than Sarah and Simon has come out, that those conversations have been had.
Yeah.
At least I would hope they have been. I think we don't, I guess, to be fair, we don't have Sarah's sexuality confirmed, but especially as of this episode. But like
The only sexuality that is confirmed is Simon's.
period. So yeah, I was just wondering if there was anything else at play other than like she was probably bullied by girls. But it could also just be like a gendered thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know. I think there's ways you could read into that, but like we're splitting hairs at that point, and it just gets into really, really strong conjecture that we don't have enough data to really say anything more on that.
Yeah.
Simon and Micah. Oof.
So we dragged him through the mud last episode.
Yeah.
That was last episode, right?
Yeah, last episode, I think we basically kind of had this conversation early last episode. But we got to decide if there's anything more that we want to talk about.
I haven't had a chance to listen to last episode.
Yeah, you're good. So basically we just talked about like all of the reasons why like Micah being an alcoholic and an addict means like why we don't like him in that scene,
mm-hmm.
and then also the moments where we can at least understand and at least pity him a little bit.
Yeah.
And so what I want to talk about in the context of Simon, because we really focus on like who we saw Micah as a character. Mm-hmm. Micah is the reason that Simon will do whatever someone else wants or say what they want to hear to get them to love him.
You're right.
Or is that a too strong way of putting it?
No, that hurt. That got me right in the heart. But I think you're right. Because it's very clearly not Linda.
Yeah.
You know, like we get one scene of Linda, but it very clearly is not.
And I think I'm almost tearing out at the fact that Simon's two ways of interacting with people he cares about are protection and being a pushover.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. It's okay, I'll talk. I would fully agree with that. I think, and you get so much of how you interact with people because your first relationships are your immediate family. And that's how you learn how to have a relationship. And those are like, obviously your very formative years, you're growing up. And we know Micah's an addict. We don't know how he treated the kids. However, a form of abuse is almost a guarantee when there is an addict involved.
And I just want to quick address, I think we said it, we covered it really quickly in one of our episodes. I think it might have been the Revolution episode, where we kind of, for a second, took it as a given that Simon was physically abused when we don't know that.
Right.
I think it was potentially you who kind of like noted his stiffness in the hug,
mm-hmm.
And kind of wondered if that was a sign. But I think regardless, I think Simon, I think it's still hard to tell.
Yeah, and unless we had some sort of like flashback or like he tells somebody, talks about it in some way, I don't know that we'll ever know for sure. But regardless of whether it's physical or emotional or verbal, some form of abuse is almost a guarantee when there's an addict involved.
Yeah. I mean, there's emotional abuse is well established.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Yeah. But the one thing I kind of just want to say to kind of tie this conversation about Micah on a bow is that Simon's situation with taking care of his mother has forced him to let his dad back into his life.
Yeah. And he's taken that L for his mom. And he thought about it, but did he really? Like, because he just said that, and now it's like, oh shit, now I have to.
Yeah. So I guess that ends Simon's relationship with his parents. To close out the episode, Micah's relationship with Sarah and Linda, we don't see it.
No, we don't.
But like, I what I want to speak to, and this is my take on it. I'll just read everything I've written. Those two are traumatized by Mika, but they have found the ability to move on the best they can, and they do not have to think about him anymore. And Simon is no longer in that boat.
Yep.
He was, and now he's not.
Yep.
And so, like, I don't know if there's much I can say right now with the information we have, like, what their relationship was with Mika. But I think from his scene with Simon and the fact that they have not mentioned him at all is a sign that they are at least doing their best to just move on.
Yeah. And I think it's pretty clear that Mika does not respect that. Like, he doesn't understand. Because when he's with Simon, he keeps asking about, I think he asked like 2 or 3 times, how's Sarah and your mom? And if he respected why they can't, like, why they don't interact with him anymore, why they're no contact, he wouldn't ask. At least that's my take on it.
Yeah. I mean, they've definitely had no contact. Like, the fact that he is desperate for information about them.
Yeah. They're no contact, and I don't think Mika respects that. He's obviously not actively seeking them out, but just in asking Simon.
I want to give him some benefit of the doubt, saying that he understands it, but he doesn't like it.
Yeah.
Which I think potentially for someone in his mental state is like 2 steps away from stopping accepting it.
I can get behind that. I think I just try not to give him the benefit of the doubt.
That's fair. But like, just like the way he asked, like, how are Mom and Sarah?
Yeah.
Simon gave him a chance.
Yeah.
An opportunity. And I think we don't see what Mika was like when Simon wasn't around and before he'd gotten that opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think before Simon shows up, he is far more... We don't see Mika's face before he opens the door to Simon.
Correct.
Which is something that... or he might kind of see it. I can't exactly remember. Like, he may be like walking to the door. But like, it's not enough for us really... For me, at least, to really place his mental state beforehand.
Just based on his apartment, I would go out on a limb and say he might be on a bender.
Or a depression hole.
Or that. Which, for an addict, they're not always one and the same, but for an active addict, they tend to come in pairs.
Yeah. Well, if that's all we have to say about Mika, fun fact, guys, during the course of this episode, we realized we can't do this in one part. Because we are maybe halfway through our notes.
And we are an hour and a half into recording.
Welcome to the end of part 1. I mean, you will know this because it will say 5A and Love Among Royals part 1. But hey, it's the great thing about live podcasting, y'all.
I really thought we were going to be able to get through this.
Sorry to end on such a bummer talking about Mika. I was actually going to try to find a way to not end an episode talking about that, but
here we are.
Here we are. Stay tuned. Hopefully these parts will be edited close to each other, so you don't have to wait as long as you would to get a normal episode, normal episode, for the next part. But
stay tuned for part 2.
Yes, stay tuned for part 2,
where we talk about everybody else. Starting with, I just realized we ended in a place where we can't smoothly connect to the next episode. So, Margaret as host gets to choose where we start next. Fuck. Starting with somebody whose relationship is not with Simon.
Because we covered all those.
I don't know who we're starting with yet. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to keep up to date with when we release new episodes and other pod-related announcements, you can check out our Instagram at People Don't Talk About. Our next episode will be the second part of this episode type. So with that, all that's left to say is...
Let's start a revolution, baby.